If you've ever heard yourself or someone in your church say, "We can never get a grant," then you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not wrong for having those thoughts. In fact, those thoughts are normal, and they're even understandable. And for many churches, they've been sitting quietly in the room for years, closing doors that were never actually locked. But today, we're going to open them up. And in this video, we're tackling two things that hold churches back from grant funding more than anything else. Number one, the myths that people believe about grants. And number two, the mindsets that keep those myths alive. And by the time we're done, it's my hopes that you'll see grants not as a foreign or an intimidating world that belong to somebody else, but as a legitimate and even an exciting way that God can resource the ministry you've already been faithful to build. Because the biggest barrier between most churches and grant funding is not eligibility, it's not capacity, it's not even paperwork, it's simply perspective. All right, before we talk about the myths, let me say something very important. Almost every myth that we're about to discuss came from somewhere real. A difficult experience, a story someone heard, a system that once was genuinely hard to navigate. Myths don't just appear out of nowhere. They grow from real frustrations, and we're going to honor that. But we're also going to look at them honestly, because what was true in the past does not have to determine what is possible in the future. We've collected 8 of the most common myths churches believe about grants. For each one, we'll name it, look at where it came from, and then we'll replace it with what is actually true. So are you ready? Let's begin. All right, myth 1. Grants are only for big organizations. Here's the truth. Grants exist for organizations of every size. In fact, many funders actively look for smaller organizations that are deeply connected to their communities. A church serving 200 families through a rural food pantry may be exactly the kind of partnership a foundation is looking for. So size is not the qualifier, but community presence is, demonstrated need is, and organizational integrity is. Myth number 2, you must be a 501c3 to receive any grants. Well, here's the truth. Many grants do require it, but it's not the only path. Some churches partner with other nonprofits through something called fiscal sponsorship. Others receive grants through denominational foundations. Listen, obtaining 501c3 status is often more achievable than people think, so don't let the paperwork be the wall that stops you. Myth 3, you need a professional grant writer, and the truth is, you can't afford one. Well, here's the other truth. Grant writing is a learnable skill, there's no license required, and there's no special degree. Grant writing is simply clear communication about the work that you already do. Many first-time grant writers have secured meaningful funding by simply telling their organization's story well. Professional writers can help, yes, but they are not required to begin. Myth number 4, grants are just one-time windfalls. Here's the truth. Grants can become a stable revenue stream when pursued strategically. No single grant should be treated as permanent income, but organizations that build relationships with funders, deliver strong programs, and report results well often see their grant revenue grow. A small first grant can lead to renewals. Renewals lead to trust, and trust leads to larger opportunities. Grants are not a lottery ticket. They are relationships, and strong relationships grow. Myth number 5, church-state separation means funders cannot give money to churches. Here's the truth. The legal restriction is much more narrow than people assume. Government funding cannot support religious activities like worship or evangelism, but it can support community programs like food distribution, housing assistance, youth development. And private foundations have no such restrictions at all. In fact, many actively partner with faith-based organizations. Myth number 6, if we take grant money, funders will control our ministry. Here's the truth. Grants require accountability, not control. A funder cannot tell you what to preach, who to hire as a pastor, or how to run your church. They simply expect that the funds they provided you are used for the purpose they funded. That's not control, that's stewardship. Myth number 7, we applied once and got rejected, so it probably isn't worth trying again. Here's the truth, rejection is normal. Even experienced grant writers expect rejection regularly. In fact, the national average says a 20 to 30% success rate is considered strong. Rejection simply means this funder, this grant, at this particular time was not the right match. Organizations that succeed are not the ones who avoid rejection, they are the ones who continue after it. Myth number 8, grant writing takes too much time, especially for small grants. Here's the truth. The first proposal takes the longest. You're gathering data, clarifying your programs, building your narrative. But once that work exists, future applications become easier. Your second grant takes less time, your third, even less. Think of the first proposal not as time spent, think of it as infrastructure built. All right, now we've dismantled the myths, but myths are only the surface. Underneath them is something deeper. It's called mindsets. Mindset shapes how you see yourself in relation to the opportunity. You can know every fact about grants and still hesitate because your thinking hasn't shifted yet. So let's talk about 6 mindset shifts that change everything. Mindset shift number 1. The old thinking says we're asking for a handout, but the new thinking says we're offering a partnership. Listen, funders are looking for organizations that can help accomplish their mission. Your church brings community trust, facilities, volunteers, and proven programs. That's not begging, that's partnership. Shift 2. Old thinking says, we don't deserve this. But the new thinking says our community deserves this. If your church has faithfully served families for years, you have every right to tell that story clearly. Not with arrogance, but with confidence. Shift number 3. The old thinking says grants will compromise our integrity. But the new thinking says discernment guides what we accept. Not every grant is the right fit. That's okay. But wise leaders evaluate opportunities instead of avoiding them. Shift number 4. The old thinking says fundraising distracts from ministry. But the new thinking says resourcing ministry is ministry leadership. Programs serving families need sustainable funding. Leadership means ensuring those resources exist. Shift number 5. Old thinking. We'll apply when we're ready. But the new thinking says readiness is built by beginning. No organization starts perfectly prepared. Progress happens through practice. Start small, learn, improve, and then repeat. Shift number 6. Old thinking says this is about money. But the new thinking says, no, this is about mission. Every grant supports real people. It supports families, children, neighbors. Grant writing is simply telling the story of why that work matters.